Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really focusing in, taking a close look at a specific piece of hardware. We're looking at the Asus Prime GeForce RTX 5070 Ti graphics card.
A popular one.
Exactly. And our mission, really, is to cut through the marketing, get past the raw specs. We want to give you a shortcut to understanding what this card is all about, who it's for, and where it fits in the whole PC hardware picture right now.
And that's why looking closely at a review like this is so useful, isn't it?
Right.
We're not just going to read off a list. We're digging out the important bits, the surprising details to give you a real sense of what makes it significant.
Okay.
It's about understanding the why behind the design, the performance choices, and why they actually matter for you.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in. Let's unpack the core identity of this Asus Prime RTX 5070 TiOC.
Okay.
The review makes it pretty clear straight away. This is a modern card, no doubt, but it strikes a really nice balance, I think, between, raw power and just being user-friendly, practical.
Gotcha.
It's definitely aimed at enthusiasts, people who want more than just okay for, say, high refresh 1440p or maybe dipping their toes into 4K gaming.
Right, demanding users.
Yeah. And what really struck me is the look, the aesthetic. It's not like some of those louder, flashier, gamer cards.
Covered in RGB lights.
Exactly. This Prime OC, it's got this very restrained, almost professional look.
Understated.
Perfect way to put it. It seems designed for someone who wants serious power under the bonnet, but doesn't need all the gaudy lights on the outside.
And that design choice, it's actually quite telling, isn't it? It's not just about looks.
How so?
Well, it shows how part of the market is maturing. For a long time, gamer meant aggressive angles and flashing lights.
True.
But this card, it speaks to maybe the prosumer type user, someone who needs top performance for creative work during the day.
Like video editing or 3D stuff.
Exactly. And then wants to switch seamlessly to high-end gaming at night. It fits into a cleaner, more minimalist setup. It suggests that, top performance doesn't have to shout about it.
Quiet confidence. I like that.
Precisely.
And that quiet confidence seems to carry over into the build quality too. The foundations.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, you pick it up, and the review says it feels really sturdy, solid metal backplate, subtle Asus branding. It feels like a tool, not a toy.
Built to last.
Seems like it. And the cooling is obviously key there. It uses that classic axial-tech fan design. Now, that's more than just marketing speak, right?
Huh.
What's the advantage of axial-tech here?
Yeah, axial-tech. That's a really important engineering detail, not just a name. So unlike some older fan designs that kind of push air outwards,
Right.
axial-tech fans, they have these smaller hubs and longer blades. They're designed specifically to force air downwards with more pressure.
More focused airflow.
Exactly, more static pressure. So they're way better at pushing air through those tightly packed heatsink fins underneath.
Okay, makes sense.
And for a GPU like this, which can draw a fair bit of power and generate heat, getting that heat away efficiently is crucial. It stops the card from throttling, slowing down, and helps it last longer. It's about solid engineering.
Right. Solid engineering leading to smooth performance. Which brings us to the fun part. How does it actually run?
Let's get into it.
The review mentions performance in demanding games, like racing sims in San Francisco or big MMO battles.
Yeah, graphically intensive stuff.
And it says the RTX 5070 Ti keeps frame rates consistently high, keeps stutters low. And a big part of that seems to be the memory, 16 gigabytes of GDDR7.
That's a hefty amount.
So for you, the listener, maybe you're pushing 4K textures or working with really large 3D models. What difference does that memory actually make in the real world?
Well, that's 16 gigs of GDDR7. It's not just a number on a spec sheet. It really impacts versatility.
How so?
For anyone dealing with those texture-heavy games or, like you said, big creative projects, that huge amount of fast memory means things load quicker, textures stream in, faster in games.
So let's pop in.
Less pop-in, definitely. And in creative apps, think video editing, scrubbing through complex 8K timelines feels much smoother. Loading big assets in 3D software is faster.
Right.
It really helps bridge that gap. So you can go from a heavy gaming session right into, say, detailed CAD work or rendering video without the system feeling like it's choking. It makes it a really strong all-around investment.
Okay, so powerful and versatile. What about looking ahead? Connectivity, future-proofing.
Important considerations.
It's got PCIe 5.0 support, which, screams future-proof for next-gen motherboards.
It does signal that, yeah.
Though the review is honest, it says the real-world games over PCIe 4.0 right now. for gaming at least, are still pretty modest.
That's generally true for current games, yes.
But it gives you that peace of mind, right? Knowing your investment isn't going to be outdated super quickly.
Absolutely. It's about longevity. And while gaming might not max out PCIe 5.0 yet, pairing it with, say, a super fast Gen 5 NVMe drive.
For storage speed?
Exactly. Or for certain professional compute tasks, that extra bandwidth can start to make a difference. So it's forward-looking.
And the actual ports, the output.
Pretty comprehensive, according to the review. You get one HDMI 2.1B.
Which handles what? 4K 144 hertz with VRR?
Yep. And then 3 DisplayPort 2.1B outputs alongside it.
Okay, so that gives you a lot of flexibility for monitors.
Huge flexibility. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it means you can drive the latest high-refresh 4K displays, no problem.
Or multiple monitors.
Easily. You could run your main high-res gaming monitor plus a couple of 1440p side screens for productivity, or maybe even hook up a trio of ultra-wide displays if you wanted. It handles complex setups.
So it sounds powerful, well-built, flexible, but what's it actually like to live with day to day? Under load.
Right. The user experience, thermals, noise.
Exactly. The review highlights that it runs surprisingly cool, even under heady stress testing, like with Furmark.
Which is brutal on GPUs.
Yeah, notoriously tough. Peak temps apparently stay around the mid-70s Celsius.
That's pretty good for this performance class.
Which comes back to that chunky heatsink and good airflow we talked about.
The cooling solution doing its job.
And the noise. It says it's, quote, reasonable. The fans only really spin up noticeably during the absolute toughest benchmarks.
So not during typical gaming.
Apparently not so much. It's described as more of a low hum than a, high-pitched whine.
Okay, that's a big plus.
Yeah, the review suggests you could comfortably have your PC on the desk without it sounding like a jet preparing for takeoff, which anyone who's had a loud card knows is a blessing.
Oh, absolutely. Been there. And power draw.
Rated around 300 watts under full synthetic load. But in real-world gaming, it apparently hovers more around the mid-200-watt mark.
More efficient in practice, then.
Seems so. The advice is to pair it with at least a 650-watt power supply, just to give you comfortable headroom, especially if you've got a power-hungry CPU in there, too.
Right. Always good to have a margin. And honestly, those metrics, thermals, noise, power, they're so important for your actual enjoyment and system stability. Totally. A cool, quiet card just makes for a better experience day in, day out. And it probably helps the card last longer, too. Worrying about temps constantly, that's no fun. This sounds like it avoids that.
Yeah, efficient power without excessive heat or noise. Sounds like a good balance.
A real quality of life thing.
And speaking of user features, it also has dual BIOS.
Ah, okay. Performance and quiet modes.
Exactly. You can switch between a performance profile, more aggressive fans, higher clocks, and a quiet profile that, tames the fans for near-silent operation when you're just browsing or doing light work.
Nice to have that choice.
But here's something really interesting, especially for some listeners. It's got an SFF-ready badge. Small form factor ready.
Okay, that's significant for the mini ITX crowd.
Right. And the review says it's not just marketing fluff. Asus apparently cleverly trimmed some key dimensions.
How so?
To make sure it fits better in popular compact cases, like maybe an NZXT-H1 or a Leanline Q58, without bumping into the PSU shroud or a front-mounted cooler.
Ah, avoiding common clearance issues in small cases. That is clever engineering.
So for you builders out there working with micro ATX or mini ITX, this seems like a huge plus. It potentially means less hassle building, better airflow inside those tight confines.
And crucially, it means you don't necessarily have to compromise as much on graphics power just because you want a smaller PC.
Exactly. Opens up possibilities for really powerful compact builds that might have been tricky before.
Yeah, that's a big deal for that segment. It's still a 2.5 slot card, mind you.
True, it's not tiny.
But given the performance it packs, that's a pretty minor concession, I'd say.
Fair point. Okay, so bringing it all together, what's the value proposition here?
The bottom line.
Yeah. Pricing puts it in that upper mid-range territory. It's definitely not cheap.
Investments in this tier rarely are.
But when you add it all up, the strong cooling, the 16 gigs of GDDR7, the PCIe 5.0 support, plus those extras like dual BIOS and the SFF readiness, the asking price starts to seem more, justified, doesn't it? It's not trying to win on flashiness.
No RGB everywhere.
Right. It's relying on just solid engineering and sensible, useful features.
And I think that sums up the value and the verdict really well. It's a no-nonsense kind of beast.
Yeah.
It delivers the performance for high-refresh gaming, even at higher resolutions. It's thoughtfully designed for different build types. And the cooling keeps things under control without making a racket.
So a solid choice.
A very compelling choice, I'd say. If you're looking for a high-performance GPU that, doesn't scream gamer rig, but absolutely delivers where it counts, the Prime OC seems like a really strong contender.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive into the Asus Prime GeForce RTX 5070 Ti OC. It definitely comes across as powerful, really well-engineered, and subtly designed. Great performance, great features.
It really does. And, this raises an interesting question for you, the listener, to think about. As performance hardware keeps pushing forward, what does this card's focus, this emphasis on solid engineering and sensible features over, just flashy looks, what does that tell us about where PC component design might be heading?
Interesting point.
And how might that kind of shift reshape your own expectations for what a high-end system looks like and feels like in the future?
That is a great question to ponder, especially if you're planning your next build. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive today.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
We hope you found it useful, and we definitely encourage you to keep exploring these fascinating topics.